Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
The alarms had been screaming for so long that silence felt unnatural. Elias Varn barely noticed when they stopped. At first, the sudden quiet made him think he'd gone deaf. Then came the deeper realization. The systems that powered the alarms were gone. Dead, just like most of the ship. The Eidolon drifted, broken and bleeding into space. A once proud colony vessel, designed to carry 10,000 souls to a new world, now held only ghosts and fire. Elias stumbled through the corridor, one hand pressed against his side. His suit had sealed itself around the worst of the damage, but the pain still pulsed with every step. The emergency lights flickered dimly, casting everything in a sickly orange glow. "Come on," he muttered to himself. Just a little further. The ship groaned, a deep, metallic cry that echoed to the hull like something alive and suffering. He reached the junction where the escape pod were housed, or what was left of them. The first pod bay was empty, doors blown open, cables hanging loose like veins ripped from flesh. The second was worse, crushed inward from an external impact. The third. He stopped. One pod remained. Just one. Elias let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "Of course," he said quietly. "Wouldn't be easy." He limped toward it, every step heavier than the last. The pod's indicator light blinked green. Functional. Ready? Waiting. He reached out, resting his hand against the cold metal. This was it. The last way out. The last chance. Behind him, something shifted. A faint sound, too soft to be the ship. Footsteps. Elias turned sharply, wincing as pain flared through his side. At the far end of the corridor stood a figure. Small. Still. Watching him. For a split second, his mind tried to make it human. A child, maybe. A survivor. But then the light flickered, and the illusion broke. She wasn't human. Her form was slender, almost fragile. But there was something unnatural about the way she held herself. Too balanced, too precise. Her skin shimmered faintly, like liquid glass catching distant starlight. And her eyes, they reflected everything. Not like mirrors, but like they absorbed the world. Elias exhaled slowly. "Well," he said under his breath, "guess I'm not the only one who made it." The girl stepped forward cautiously. "You are alive," she said. Her voice was strange, layered, like two tones slightly out of sync. It echoed in the corridor, even though she spoke softly. "Last I checked," Elias replied. "You..." She tilted her head, as if processing the question in multiple ways at once. "Yes, I am functioning." "Good to hear." They stood there for a moment, the silence between them filled with distant creaks and the faint hiss of failing systems. Elias glanced back at the escape pod, then back at her. "Any others?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. I searched. I felt no one." That word, felt, stuck with him. "Yeah," Elias said quietly. "Same here." Another tremor ran through the ship. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere far below, something collapsed with a thunderous crash. Time was running out. The girl's gaze followed his to the pod. "There is one place," she said. "Yeah, you should take it." Elias blinked. "That's your first instinct? Not even gonna argue?" She stepped closer, her expression calm but intense. "You are injured. Your biological systems are unstable. You will not survive long without assistance." He let out a short laugh. "Straight to the point, huh? It is accurate." "Yeah, it is." He looked at her more carefully now. Up close, she seemed even younger. Not in years, but in experience. There was curiosity in her eyes, raw and unfiltered, but also something deeper, something ancient. "What are you?" he asked. She hesitated. "I am Ilari." "Right. Of course you are," he said, as if that explained everything. "I'm Elias. Human, in case that wasn't obvious." "I know of humans," she said. "Your species is contradictory." Elias smirked faintly. "That's one way to put it." The ship shuddered again, harder this time. A warning light above the pod flickered from green to yellow. Structural integrity. Critical. Elias exhaled slowly. "All right," he said. "No more stalling." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the pod. "You get in." She didn't move. "No," she said. Elias frowned. "No. You should go," she repeated. "Your survival probability is lower than mine without immediate evacuation." "Yeah, but here's the thing," he said, leaning slightly against the wall. "You're assuming survival is the only thing that matters." She studied him, confusion rippling across her features. "What else is there?" He gestured weakly around them. "All of this. Everything we were. Everything we tried to be." Her gaze flickered, as if trying to process something beyond data. "I do not understand." "I know," Elias said softly. "That's kind of the point." Another violent tremor. The corridor lights dimmed further. The pod system beeped. Countdown initiated. Automatic launch in 90 seconds. "Damn it," Elias muttered. He pushed himself off the wall and grabbed her wrist. Her skin was cool, almost weightless under his grip. "Hey," she said, startled. "No time," he said, pulling her toward the pod. "You're going." "I did not consent." "Yeah. Well, neither did I when this whole mess started." He shot back. She resisted, but he was stronger. Barely, and only for now. He guided, pushed her into the pod's open chamber. "Stop," she said, her voice rising, harmonics clashing. "This is illogical." "Welcome to humanity," Elias said, breathing hard. The hatch began to close. She turned sharply, her eyes locking onto his. "Why?" she demanded. The question hit harder than anything else. Elias paused. For a moment, the chaos faded. The alarms, the fire, the dying ship. There was just a question, and his answer. "Because," he said quietly, "you're not done yet." Her expression shifted, confusion giving way to something deeper. "You don't even know me," she said. He smiled faintly. "I know enough." The hatch sealed with a heavy clang. Inside, LYR pressed her hand against the transparent barrier. "Elias," she called. He placed his own hand against the outside. "Live," he said. The pod's engines ignited. "Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice trembling now, less controlled, more real. Elias met her gaze. "Because maybe someday," he said, "you'll come back and prove this wasn't all for nothing." The pod launched. It shot away from the Eidolon, disappearing into the void. Elias stood there long after it was gone, the ship growing around him, its final moment approaching. He sank slowly to the floor, leaning back against the cold metal wall. "Guess that's that," he murmured. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Inside, the Eidolon began to break apart, and Elias Varn closed his eyes as the light swallowed everything. Elwire did not dream. Her kind did not sleep, not in the way humans did. The Ilari existed in a constant state of awareness, their consciousness flowing like a current rather than switching on and off. But during the long drift through space, something changed. She began to fragment, not physically. Her form remained intact within the escape pod. But internally, her awareness, once seamless and unified, began to break into moments. Moments she could not control. Moments she returned to again and again. A corridor burning in orange light. A human man, bleeding and smiling. A hand against glass. Live. The word echoed, not as sound, but as sensation. For the first time in her existence, LYR experienced something the Ilari had no precise term for. Memory with weight. The pod was found 143 cycles later. An Ilari vessel, vast and silent, intercepted the drifting signal. To them, it was nothing unusual. Derelict craft were common in the aftermath of collapsing civilizations. But when they opened the pod, the resonance inside it was wrong. Too concentrated. Too focused. LYR emerged slowly, her body unfolding from its dormant state. Her light flickered faintly, unstable. A circle of Ilari formed around her. They did not speak aloud. They did not need to. "What has happened to you?" their collective presence asked. LYR looked at them. Truly looked, for the first time since before the pod launched. "I survived," she said. The words came out uneven, shaped awkwardly by a vocal system she was no longer fully used to. Survival is expected. One of the elders responded. But your resonance, it is altered. LYR hesitated. Images rose again. Fire. Silence. A smile. He gave me his place, she said. The Ilari paused. Not physically, but in the way their shared consciousness rippled and slowed. Clarify. There was one escape vessel, LYR said. 2 beings. He ensured that I entered. He remained. A long silence followed. That is inefficient. Another presence concluded. Resource preservation dictates self-priority. LYR felt something tighten within her. No, she said. The word surprised even her. The Ilari did not reject logic, but they did not often encounter resistance from within. Explain. LYR searched for the right structure, the right pattern of meaning. I do not have the correct framework, she admitted, but it was not inefficiency. It was intention beyond survival. The elders pulsed faintly. You are describing irrational behavior. Yes, LYR said, and it mattered. They brought her back to the Ilari homeworld. It was not a world in the human sense. There were no cities, no fixed structures, no borders. The Ilari lived in vast fields of energy and matter intertwined, landscapes that shifted with thought, shaped by collective will. Light moved like water. Time felt flexible. It had always been enough. But now, LYR felt the difference. Where once she had flowed effortlessly within the collective, she now felt edges, boundaries, a sense of self. She could still hear the others, still connect, still merge, but there was something inside her that remained separate, something that remembered. You are isolating, one of the elders observed. LYR stood at the edge of a luminous field, watching patterns ripple outward into infinity. I am thinking, she replied. Thinking is not isolation. It is when the thoughts do not align. A pause. This change originates from a human. Yes. Then it is a distortion. LYR turned, her form flickering slightly brighter. No, she said again. It is clarity. The elder's presence sharpened. You are defending a single-instance interaction over the collective equilibrium of your species. I am recognizing its significance. Based on what metric? LYR hesitated. Then quietly, he chose to end his existence so that mine could continue. The field around them stilled. That is confirmed. And you call that inefficient, she said. Yes. LYR's light pulsed. Uneven for a moment. Then your definition is incomplete. Time passed, not in days or years, but in cycles of change, in shifts of energy and understanding. LYR underwent evaluation, observation, correction attempts. The Ilari did not punish. They adjusted. They tried to reintegrate her fully into collective, to smooth out the anomaly in her resonance. But the more they tried, the more something within her resisted, not violently, not rebelliously, simply, persistently. She continued to remember. She continued to question. She continued to speak of the human. Eventually, they stopped trying to erase it. Instead, they chose to study it. You will document the event, the council told her. I already am, LYR replied. Not as memory, as analysis. LYR paused. Then she nodded. And so she began. She studied humanity. At first, it was data, archive transmissions, cultural records, fragments of language and art. She learned their history, how they rose, how they fractured, how they reached the stars and brought their conflicts with them. She learned of their contradictions, their capacity for destruction, their capacity for creation, and their tendency, again and again, to act against their own survival for reasons that defied simple logic. She cataloged it all, but it wasn't enough, because none of it explained him. Your focus is narrowing, an observer noted. Yes, LYR said. That reduces processing efficiency. It increases understanding. Of what? LYR paused. Then she answered with certainty. Of why he chose me. Years passed. 8, by human measurement. LYR changed. Her control over her form became more precise. Her energy more stable. Her individuality, once an anomaly, became something defined. She could still connect to the Ilari collective, but she no longer dissolved into it. She stood apart, and for the first time in Ilari history, that was not seen as an error. It was seen as evolution. One cycle. She stood before the council again. "I am leaving," she said. The chamber dimmed slightly, attention focusing on her. State purpose. "I am searching for survivors of the human species. Probability of success is low. I am aware. Your continued study could be conducted remotely." "No," LYR said. "It cannot." A pause. "Explain." LYR's light softened. "He did not give his life for a record," she said. "He gave it for a continuation. The council processed this. You intend to locate that continuation." "Yes." "And if none exists?" LYR hesitated. Then, quietly, "Then I will carry it alone." The council did not stop her. For the Ilari, restraint was rarely necessary. Understanding was enough. "You may go," they said, "but know this. You are no longer solely Ilari." LYR inclined her head slightly. "I know." As she turned to leave, one final thought reached her, so faint it was almost separate from collective. "What you carry, it changes you." LYR paused. Then she answered, "It already has." Her vessel departed in silence. No ceremony, no farewell, just a shift in light, and she was gone, back into the vast, uncertain dark between stars, searching, remembering, and holding on to a single, impossible idea that somewhere, somehow, a promise could be answered. Earth was not dead, but it was no longer alive in the way it once had been. From orbit, LYR saw a world caught between memory and recovery. Vast green stretches had returned, spreading like cautious hope across continents once scar-black. Oceans shimmered again, though their patterns were altered. Currents slower, quieter, as if the planet itself was still healing. There were lights. Not many, but enough. Humanity remained. LYR stood within her vessel, watching the surface through a translucent field of shifting light. Her form pulsed faintly, reacting to something she had not anticipated. Not data, not analysis. Recognition. "This is where they began," she whispered. And somewhere deep within her resonance, something answered. "This is what he gave you back." Her descent did not go unnoticed. Human defense systems, rudimentary but functional, tracked the incoming object immediately. Old satellites, patched together with newer code, struggled to classify her vessel. Unknown origin, unknown structure, unknown intent. Warnings spread across the surviving networks. By the time LYR touched down, they were already watching. She chose her landing site carefully, not in the center of a settlement, but close enough to be seen. A wide, open plain near the ruins of what had once been a city. Crumbling towers leaned like broken teeth against the horizon. Vegetation had begun reclaiming the streets, weaving green through concrete skeletons. Her vessel dissolved as it landed, folding into itself as light and vanishing into the air. LYR stepped forward onto Earth. For a moment, she did nothing. Her form shimmered as she adjusted, processing gravity, atmosphere, magnetic fluctuations, and something else. Emotion. The ground beneath her feet felt heavy, not physically, meaningfully. They approached her slowly. 5 of them. Humans. Armed. Cautious. Afraid. LYR turned toward them, her movements calm, deliberate. The one in front, a woman, older, her face marked by years of survival, raised a weapon. "Stop right there," she called. LYR stopped. "I have no intention of causing harm," she said. Her voice carried clearly, though she did not raise it. The humans exchanged glances. "She speaks English," one of them muttered. "Or something close enough," another replied. The woman stepped forward slightly. "Identify yourself." LYR considered the question. "I am LYR." "That doesn't tell me anything," the woman said. "I am Ilari," LYR added. Silence. "Alien," someone whispered. The word hung in the air like a threat. The woman's grip tightened on her weapon. "Why are you here?" LYR met her gaze. "I am looking for someone." They didn't trust her. LYR expected that. Trust, she had learned, was not a default state for humans, especially not after collapse. They escorted her to their settlement anyway, not as a guest, not exactly as a prisoner either, something in between. The settlement was built within the bones of the old world, reinforced structures, salvaged materials, energy grids cobbled together from pre-collapse tech, and whatever they had managed to rebuild. It was fragile, but it endured. People watched her as she passed, some with curiosity, some with fear, some with something darker, resentment. LYR felt it all, not as Ilari would, as a distant collective signal, but individually, sharply, every emotion distinct. It was overwhelming. "You'll stay here," the woman said, leading her into a secured structure, "until we figure out what you are and what you want." "I have already told you," LYR replied. "Yeah," the woman said. "You're looking for someone. That doesn't explain why an alien shows up on Earth 8 years after the end of everything." LYR paused. Then, quietly, "He was on a ship called the Eidolon." The woman's expression shifted just slightly. "You know that name?" LYR asked. The woman hesitated. "I've heard it." LYR stepped forward. "Then you know it was destroyed." "Most ships were," the woman said. "That doesn't make your story special." "It does to me," LYR said. The woman studied her for a long moment. "Get some rest," she said finally, "if that's even something you do." Then she turned and left. LYR did not rest. She stood in the quiet room, observing the faint hum of human-built systems. Everything here was imperfect, inefficient, unstable. And yet, it worked. She reached out, lightly touching a damaged interface panel. Her energy flowed into it instinctively. The panel flickered, stabilized. The room's lighting brightened slightly. LYR pulled back, studying her own hand. She had not planned to do that. Days passed. They watched her constantly, tested her, questioned her. She answered what she could, ignored what she could not. And slowly, very slowly, the tension shifted. Not gone, but reduced. It began with small things. A failing water filtration system that suddenly stabilized overnight. A power fluctuation that corrected itself before causing damage. A broken medical scanner that came back online without explanation. They didn't accuse her, but they noticed. "You're helping us," the woman said one evening. It wasn't a question. LYR looked up from where she stood near a window, watching the settlement below. "Yes." "Why?" LYR considered that. "Because you are still here," she said. The woman frowned. "That's not an answer. It is the only one I have." The woman crossed her arms. "You expect us to just accept that?" "No," LYR said calmly. "I expect you to question it." That seemed to catch her off guard. After a moment, she asked, "What's his name?" LYR turned fully toward her. "Elias Varn." The woman's expression didn't change, but something in her posture did. Subtle, but real. "I'll check the archives," she said. The archive was buried deep, beneath layers of destruction and time. Old data centers, partially restored, holding fragments of what humanity had been. LYR was allowed access under supervision. She moved through the digital remnants like she moved through physical space. Carefully, attentively, searching, always searching. The name returned nothing at first. Too many records lost. Too many systems corrupted. But LYR did not stop, because she did not hope. She knew. It took time, days blending into each other, until a fragment, corrupted, partial, but real, a log entry, designation, Eidolon, timestamp, final hours. LYR's form flickered as she accessed it. "Play it," she said. The system hesitated, then complied. The recording struggled to stabilize. Static tore through the image, audio distorted, and then a face, human, injured, smiling. "Elias, log entry," his voice crackled. "Don't know if anyone's ever going to see this." LYR stepped closer. Every part of her focused on the image. "If you do," he continued, "then I guess we didn't vanish completely." The image glitched, stabilized again. "There was one pod left," he said. "I gave it to someone. Not human." LYR's light pulsed sharply. She's out there now, Elias said. If she made it. He paused, breathing uneven. I hope she did. The recording cut. Silence filled the archive room. Behind her, one of the humans whispered, "That's him?" The coordinates did not make sense. That was the first thing the humans told her. "It's outside map space," the woman said, standing beside LYR as the data projected faintly in the air. "Way outside. There's nothing out there." "There is," LYR replied. "You don't know that." LYR turned slightly, her light dim but steady. He embedded them in the log. "That is not random." The woman crossed her arms. "Even if it's real, that region is unstable. Old gravitational distortions, radiation storms, ships don't come back from there." LYR considered that, then simply said, "I will." Preparation did not take long. The Ilari did not build ships the way humans did. LYR's vessel was less constructed and more manifested, a convergence of energy and matter shaped by intention and refined by knowledge. Still, she adapted it. For him, atmospheric stability, biological support, structural shielding tuned to human tolerances. Every adjustment was precise, intentional, personal. "Why go alone?" the woman asked before departure. LYR paused at the edge of the landing field. "Because this began with one choice," she said. "It should end with one return." The woman studied her, then gave a small nod. "If he's out there," she said, "bring him home." LYR inclined her head. "I intend to." The journey stretched across months. Even with Ilari propulsion, the distance was vast. Space changed as she moved farther from known systems. Light thinned. Stars grew distant. Reality itself felt uneven. Distortions rippled through the void, remnants of ancient forces that had twisted gravity and time into unstable currents. LYR adjusted continuously, her vessel flowing around disruptions rather than resisting them. But something else guided her. Not data, not calculation. A pattern she could not fully define. A pull. When she reached the coordinates, she almost missed it. There was no planet, no beacon, no obvious structure. Just a region of warp space, where light bent subtly and signals fractured into noise. But LYR felt it. A faint, persistent resonance. "Human." "There," she whispered. Her vessel shifted, slipping through layers of distortion until a shape emerged. Dark, silent, broken. A station. It drifted at the center of the anomaly, partially shielded by the very distortions that made it invisible to most scans. Its structure was old, far older than the Eidolon. Human-made, but not recent. LYR approached slowly. "Residual power detected," she murmured. "Minimal. Failing." A pause. Then quieter, but present. She entered through a fractured docking port. The moment she crossed the threshold, her light dimmed slightly, adjusting to the station's failing systems. Darkness swallowed everything. Air was thin, cold, still. Scanning, her awareness spread through the structure. Corridors, chambers, dead systems. And then, a signal. Weak, but unmistakable. Life. LYR moved, not running, but faster than she had ever moved before. Through corridors lined with dust and decay. Past doors sealed long ago. Past the remains of a place that had once held purpose. Now, only one thing mattered. She reached the chamber. The door resisted. She didn't force it. She rewrote it. Energy flowed from her form into mechanisms, bypassing failure, reactivating dead circuits. The door opened with a long, strained hiss. Inside, a single chamber, and at its center, a cryogenic pod. LYR stopped. For a moment, she could not move, because she already knew, before the scan, before confirmation. She knew. "Life signs minimal," she said, her voice quieter than ever, sustained through low-power stasis. She stepped closer. The glass was clouded, but she cleared it with a touch. And there he was, Elias Varn, older, thinner, but unmistakable. "You survived," she whispered. The words were not disbelief. They were recognition. The system was failing. Power levels critical. The pod flickered, struggling to maintain stasis. LYR placed both hands against it. "Reallocation," she said softly. Energy flowed from her into the station. Systems came alive in response. Lights flickered. Circuits reconnected. The pod stabilized, but only barely. Not enough, LYR murmured. She adjusted again. This time, she didn't just stabilize. She transferred her own energy, her own resonance, fed directly into the system. The pod hummed, then released. The seal broke. Cold air rushed out. Elias collapsed forward, his body unable to support itself after years in stasis. LYR caught him before he hit the floor. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, a breath, sharp, painful, real. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused, searching. LYR remained still, supporting him. Easy, she said. The word felt different now, softer. Elias blinked. Once, twice. Then his gaze locked onto her. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, all at once. No way, he rasped. His voice was rough, barely holding together. LYR leaned closer. It is me, she said. He stared at her, trying to reconcile memory with reality. LYR. She nodded. A long silence followed. Not empty, full. Elias let out a weak, breathless laugh. Guess I picked the right person, he said. LYR's light flickered gently. You made a choice, she said. I am the result. He shook his head slightly, still trying to process. I thought that was it, he said. End of the line. It was not, LYR replied. He looked around weakly. Where are we? A station beyond map space, she said. You embedded its coordinates in your final log. Elias frowned faintly. Did I? Yes. Huh, he murmured. Smart me? He tried to sit up, failed. LYR adjusted her hold, supporting him more fully. You should remain still, she said. Yeah, he muttered, not exactly feeling my best. His gaze returned to her, more focused now, more certain. You came back, he said. LYR paused. Then quietly, yes. Another silence. Then Elias smiled, not the same as before, not the tired, resigned smile from the burning corridor. This one was lighter, real. Took you long enough, he said. LYR almost didn't understand the tone. Almost. Then something within her aligned, and for the first time, she responded not with analysis, but with something closer to feeling. I had to learn how, she said. Elias studied her for a moment, then nodded. Looks like he did. The station creaked around them, unstable, dying, but no longer alone. LYR looked at him, truly looked, not as a subject, not as a question, but as the answer she had been moving toward for 8 years. Come, she said, extending her hand. This time we both leave. Elias looked at her hand, then at her, then back again. He took it, and as LYR helped him stand, supporting his weight, the station around them began to fade into irrelevance, not because it was unimportant, but because its purpose was complete. Together, they walked back toward the light, back toward the vessel waiting beyond the broken docking port, back toward a universe that had nearly ended and was now, somehow, beginning again.